82 films, 2 Oscars. Robert De Niro might have easily been a Hollywood king. With irresponsible and inappropriate political remarks, his mouth wrecked everything he built. An empire fell. New movies bombed. The media shredded him. His family fell. Does his conduct cost him this? De Niro's career is in a worsening crisis at 81. One statement, hurled into the wind on a sultry June evening in 2024, started it. A camera filmed Robert De Niro. He recorded a presidential election message and threw a Molotov grenade into politics. "So foolish," he continued, his voice low and gravelly, each word dripping with hate. "This punk, puppy, pig, con artist, and mutt doesn't know what he's talking about. Wish I could punch him in the face." De Niro was blunt about Trump. The video went viral, garnering millions of views in hours as people saw him as a hero fighting a bully. Back then, De Niro was untouchable. Godfather, Taxi Driver, Roaring Bull, Goodfellas. He created a respectable profession over decades and generations. He could say anything, and people listened. De Niro persisted over the years. He stood on stage at the Tony Awards, the lights brilliant, the crowd excited. He was introduced as a cinematic great, and he strolled to the microphone with confidence. "I'll say one thing," he added, waiting to build tension, his voice firm but defiant. "Fob Trump." Some were stunned, some happy, and many stood in a standing ovation. Amid more cheers, he said, "It's no longer down with Trump." The cameras broadcast every second to millions, and the internet went crazy again. Head held high, he left the stage. That night was a tipping point to turmoil, not triumph. He'd spoken out against the president before, but this time it was sharper. His life fell apart after he said those words, almost as if the universe heard him and punished him. The following week was a gradual, painful plunge into a nightmare that would destroy everything he had accomplished. Hollywood rumors began weeks after that rally speech, signaling danger. De Niro was a colossus for decades, a name that could sell tickets and make a room stop talking to watch him. Now the air around him was moving. Studio executives who kissed his ring ignored him. His wiry agent Paul, who'd been with him since the Roaring Bull days, sounded uneasy on the phone. Paul replied, "Bob, it's not personal," one afternoon in July while De Niro sat in his New York apartment, staring at the cityscape. People are sensitive because of the strange climate. Trump's rhetoric enrages people. De Niro grabbed the phone tighter, his knuckles becoming white, and screamed, "What? They're mad I spoke the truth? Let them rage." Anger clung to his breast, yet worry flickered. He'd always fought, but this seemed different. Punches were coming from everywhere, and he couldn't tell who was delivering them. That flicker became a flame as the Alto Knights formed. The $45 million venture promised to revive his declining star by casting him as 2 mobsters in one film. The expectation was intense, a chance for the man who brought us Goodfellas and Casino to prove he still had the fire that lit up screens worldwide. Warner Brother, who needed a hit, took a calculated bet. As opening weekend numbers came in, the dream fell apart with a painful snap. $3.20 million from 2,651 theaters, 1,206 per screen, barely enough to run the projectors. Before marketing costs, the global budget was $5 million, leaving a $40 million shortfall. A once untouchable guy was crushed by that setback. This was a disaster that revealed a harsh truth. The king of mafia movies was falling hard. Hollywood rumors began weeks after that rally speech, signaling danger. De Niro was a colossus for decades, a name that could sell tickets and make a room stop talking to watch him. However, studio officials who used to kiss his ring were now ignoring him. His wiry agent Paul, who'd been with him since the Roaring Bull days, sounded uneasy on the phone. "Bob, it's not personal," Paul explained one afternoon in July as De Niro sat in his New York apartment, staring at the skyline. "The climate is strange, people are touchy, and Trump's stuff has heated them up." De Niro grabbed the phone tighter, his knuckles becoming white, and screamed, "What? They're mad I spoke the truth? Let them rage." Hanging up, his chest tense with fury, a glimmer of dread crossed his mind. He'd always fought, but this seemed different. Punches were coming from everywhere, and he couldn't tell who was delivering them. Who was $45 million wager to revive his waning star with a bold twist converted that flicker into a flame as night fell. He played 2 mobsters in one film. The anticipation was high. as the director of Goodfellas and Casino tried to prove he still possessed the fire that lit up screens worldwide. For Warner Brothers, a hit-seeking studio, it was worth the risk. As opening weekend numbers came in, the dream fell apart with a painful snap. $3.20 million from 2,651 cinemas, $1,206 per screen, just enough to run projectors. The global tally dropped to $5 million, leaving a $40 million hole in the budget before marketing charges. That failure crushed a once untouchable man. This was a disaster that revealed a harsh truth. The king of mafia movies was falling hard. The Alto Knights began with strong hopes, yet the trailers made something feel odd. He growled, "I'm a gangster, that's it, that's the life," with heavy makeup and prosthetics. It seemed odd, even silly, not menacing. Online conversation became harsh, with ex-users saying De Niro yelled at his reflection. The marketing was a shambles, with little TV coverage. Critics later slammed it, giving it a 38% on Rotten Tomatoes, and called it a boring remake of a genre De Niro had already dominated. The 70% audience score felt hollow, propped up by a handful of loyalists overwhelmed by the millions who skipped it. The film failed, no doubt. That stage had been falling for years since De Niro allowed his off-screen wrath eclipse his on-screen brilliance. His attacks on Trump and his followers peaked in 2024. After failing, Alto Knight doubled down and screamed at Variety, "Our film about a gangster's life is clearly targeted by know-it-all critics. It's too obvious that the MAGA crowd's mission is to ruin cinema and entertainment for others who want to see great art like the Alto Knights, which I was honored to be a part of." When he continued, "It really is all Trump's fault that cinema is dying before our own eyes," the desperation was evident. He was clinging to a story that absolved him of culpability. The outcry was quick and merciless. One commenter wrote, "He's blaming Trump for a movie nobody wanted to see," while another stated, "De Niro's lost it." And so has his audience, a deeply hurtful public rejection that went beyond MAGA fans. That rejection was measurable, a tidal wave of disinterest smashing over a man who'd once packed cinemas. In early 2025, YouGov found 62% of Americans disliked De Niro, down from 78% a decade earlier. According to Nielsen, streaming viewing for The Godfather Part 2 and Raging Bull dropped 34% since 2020, with many saying they couldn't separate the work from the artist. I hear him call me scum every time I see Goodfellas. This was the second warning indication that his 2024 Netflix series 0 Hour had failed, ignored despite his cries for attention. Producers had asked him to keep politics out of the press trip, but he raged about Trump instead. Warner Brothers is already reeling from a $60 million plus loss on the film after marketing, had enough of self-sabotage with the Alto Knights. He was dropped months ago due to his dwindling box office appeal, according to The Hollywood Reporter, a decision that felt chilly but inevitable after this recent fiasco. The contrast was extreme. Goodfellas produced $47 million in 1,990, almost $100 million now, on a $25 million budget, while the Alto Knights couldn't cobble together a tenth. A dramatic fall left viewers reeling, lamenting a colossus who seemed determined to bury himself. That interment was particularly heartbreaking because 81-year-old De Niro didn't see it coming. He still regarded himself as the titan of old, pouring his soul into the Alto Knights, telling Variety, "I had to devote a lot of my time to engage in these really deep characters that actually transmit the life of a mobster to the big screen." But reality was hard. Every picture betrayed his age, his once sharp edge softened by time, and the dual role designed to amaze felt gimmicky. They said both personas sounded like De Niro being loud and grumpy. No fans bought it either. Why see him portray two mobsters in 2025 when Casino survived? Better story given by a younger, hungry De Niro. Exhaustion was shared. Along with George Clooney and Alec Baldwin, his outspokenness had outlived its usefulness, and audiences in Hollywood were tired of his rants. De Niro's defense of diversity initiatives, what some studios are doing right now because of Trump, is frightening, and their fear to embrace diversity, equity, and inclusion rang hollow when his own film flopped without an agenda, proving the problem wasn't politics, but him, a man out of touch with a changing world. Failure stung and drained him. The studio was furious after losing millions. A scolding executive told him over the phone that he was to blame. No one wants to see you anymore. He hung up, shocked. He couldn't argue. Alto Knights was withdrawn from screens within weeks due to declining ticket sales. He begged the producers to try it, fought for every dollar of the budget, and now it was a flop completely on him. He stopped going out because he couldn't handle friends' pity and strangers' smirks. He ignored friends' calls, Scorsese's voicemails, and Pacino's SMS. "What's to say?" he'd mutter at the blank walls. "I'm completed." The godfather of mob movies, who had previously packed theaters, was now a joke, and his guilt burned hotter than his wrath. Family trouble hit hard then. Grace contacted him on March 20th, her voice harsh and anxious, unlike anything he'd heard since their messy divorce. She mentioned the kids were getting letters, and Bob could hear her pacing on the other end. "They're frightened of hate mail, threats, and you." A cold perspiration sprang out on De Niro's forehead as his stomach sank. His older kids, Drina and Raphael, the twins, had handled cameras and trolls with the toughness he taught them. This was fresh and ugly. Grace sent him letter images. "Your dad's a traitor. Hope he pays. Beware De Niro's mortality." One was worse, to his toddler daughter's caregiver. "Time's up, Bobby." Staring at the words, his breath was shallow and his mind racing. His youngest, 2 years old, born late in life to a woman he loved deeply, was his soft spot and motivation. She became a target too. He hoarsely summoned Grace back. "I'll fix this," he murmured, but he didn't know how. Now it was about the people he'd die for, and his loud tongue was hurting them. Threats went beyond letters. A stranger texted him 2 days later, on March 22nd. "You should have kept quiet, Bobby." He saw those words flashing on his computer like a warning. He stared at it for an hour, heart racing, trying to figure out who sent it. Was it a troll, a furious fan, or a powerful person who could carry out the threat? He didn't respond, didn't know what to say, but the message splintered his mind. He started checking his door locks twice, then 3 times, looking over his shoulder every time he left the building. The macho guy from Taxi Driver, who stared down the world without blinking, was afraid and loathed himself. But the worry was genuine and spreading, a shadow he couldn't shake. The next punch from Hollywood knocked him out. He was shaken by Warner Brothers, which had released some of his biggest singles. He was slated to star in a 2027 mob leader film with a $20 million salary and a chance to reprise his Casino and Goodfellas roles. A tough old-school role that might remind the world of his legend was perfect. But then the call. CEO David Zaslav was direct. His voice was icy and final. "We're cutting you. You risk too much." Risky? De Niro was shocked. They cited his impassioned rants, which had formerly garnered plaudits, but now made execs apprehensive. $20 million was lost when the project was terminated. After that call, he tightened his fists in his New York penthouse. He whispered, aghast, foolish. "They're idiots." He walked for hours, the carpet thinning, rehearsing the exchange in his thoughts. He called his lawyers and threatened to sue, demanding they fight back. He instinctively understood it was a lost struggle. Warner continued. They fired him from a 2026 action thriller and flashback parts in Joker 3, a minor but crucial role he'd been enthused about. Opportunities vanished, and the phone stopped ringing. He met Paul at Warner Brothers LA on March 25th office. Paul ignored him, shuffled papers, and cleared his throat. He finally remarked, "They're cutting you loose, Bob," his voice flat. Alto Knights failed and closed. Stop projects, a business decision, they say. Paul recoiled when De Niro laughed harshly and bitterly. "After all my help, a business decision?" His fists gripped the table as he leaned forward. "I made millions, but now I'm trash?" Not just a career hit. He was exiled from his only world. His rejection hurt more than expected. He was always the man who could recover from failure. This time, the doors were bolted. He called Scorsese, Pacino, and other set mates he'd bled with, and got voicemails or cryptic excuses. One said Bob was working on a project. Another promised to catch up, but it never did. He saw his name in business blogs like De Niro's Fall, How One Rant Ended a Legend. The remarks were harsh. "Time to leave, dinosaur." No one cares about his. Sitting in his hotel room with the curtains shut, the TV flickered with a late-night discussion show, he couldn't hear over his head noise. He committed his life to this. Nights away from his kids, marriages that disintegrated under his effort, and a body that ached from years of pushing too hard. Now, it was gone. He felt like a house with all the furnishings removed, and loneliness hit him like a freight train. Other studios withdrew. Universal discussed dropping him from a family film. His script was rejected by Paramount. He heard someone at a party declare he's toxic, which cut worse than any critic's critique. Toxic? Him? The man who created Travis Bickle and Vito Corleone? He couldn't comprehend it. He felt mocked by Oscars, Golden Globes, and plaques from a lifetime of effort at his workplace. It was hard to accept, but he was worried that his career, which he had constructed, was crumbling. He couldn't shake the shame, which grew heavier every day and became excruciating. His 19-year-old grandson Leandro is smart, humorous, and promising. One night, Drina's sob-choked voice answered the phone. "Dad, he's gone," she whispered. "Leo's gone." His body was cold when rescue came after an overdose of tablets found in his apartment. De Niro dropped the phone as the family gathered for the funeral, but he couldn't go, couldn't face Drina's accusing glare or the murmurs. He repeated, "If I'd been there," with remorse, if I hadn't let it consume me. The notion was too vast and dreadful to finish. The press persisted. They splattered the horror across every front page. Grandson died due of De Niro's carelessness. The headline read, "Bold and merciless." "A family breaks up as actor obsesses," said another. He was too preoccupied with his own problems to notice Leandro's disappearance, according to unidentified sources. The loss of his family was unhealed. The world wasn't done with him. Public humiliation came with a gulp. His National Association of Broadcasters Leadership Award was scheduled for May 2025. He gave his speech weeks of thought, imagining the plaudits and respect. A few days before the event, the call arrived. "We're withdrawing it," the voice declared flatly and brazenly. "Too much division in your comments and reputation." He stood with his phone to his ear, the room tilting. He stayed there all night, the speech crumpled on the counter above him, his never-spoken words looking down like a terrible joke. Morning news was everywhere. It trended on De Niro, along with clips of his earlier rants turned into memes that criticized him. "Fuck Trump? Nah, fuck you, Bobby," one post read with hundreds of likes. Every comment on his laptop was new, people mocking and calling him washed up and irrelevant. He directed and starred in The War Can't Fix, which hit theaters like a meteor but faded in disinterest. The flawed political thriller about a broken America grossed $12.30 million globally in against a $65 million budget, according to Box Office Mojo in late 2024. It was slammed. Variety called it a pompous, incomprehensible mess that wastes De Niro's gravitas, and Rotten Tomatoes gave it 23% approval. Crowds stayed away. Its first weekend grossed $4.80 million, compared to The Irishman's $55 million in 2019. De Niro's cinematic credibility was publicly executed by this disaster. Before, De Niro's name was enough to compel respect and assure depth. According to IMDb, he had 82 films, 2 Oscars, and a $5 billion global box office take, from Taxi Driver's moody Travis Bickle to Goodfellas' chilly Jimmy Conway. Martin Scorsese and Francis Ford Coppola used him to anchor their masterpieces. The 21st century has been crueler. His filmography is full of duds since 2000. Rotten Tomatoes rates Dirty Grandpa 11%, The Family 28%, and Grudge match 31%, as steps away from his best work. By 2025, The War Can't Fix was the culmination of his descent, a film so wrong it couldn't capitalize on the divisive political climate it meant to mock. In addition to box office failures and late-night outbursts, De Niro's decline is a steady loss of credibility, a titan undone by his own actions. Since 2016, his Trump fixation has turned righteous fury into a caricature. He raged on Kimmel. This is a dangerous, stupid person, and that's a bad combination. As he roared, he became less like Heat's stoic brilliance. "I think he has derangement syndrome regarding us too," he said, echoing Trump's comments. No one missed the irony. The stats are terrible. 6 years ago, Netflix-backed The Irishman was De Niro's last critical hit after a decade of mediocrity. Since then, His films have averaged 34% Rotten Tomatoes, down from 87% in the 1970s and 80s. His ticket sales have dropped. The War Can't Fix's $12.30 million take is 94% lower than Meet the Parents' $330 million in 2000. Adjusted for inflation, studios formerly eager to fund his passion projects now hesitate. He's a liability. An anonymous studio official warned The Hollywood Reporter in January 2025. The audience no longer cares. They regard him as a relic ranting about politics, not an actor. Compare to peers. A part like The Irishman and House of Gucci earns Al Pacino recognition at 84. After retiring in 2010, Jack Nicholson departed The Departed on a positive note. De Niro, 81, misses and swings. The Trump obsession that once inspired him is now a crutch. "I had to say something to be on record," he said Kimmel, excusing his reaction. "What record? One of a faded star shouting into the wind, drowned out by the man he hates?